There is a section tonight where Job's friend speaks, maybe. And we do have one more unnamed friend who hasn't spoken yet. So we'll get to him. Well, his name is Elihu. He's not been named to this point in the book. So we'll get to him in a second. Yeah, we'll get to Elihu. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Elihu, but I do want to spend a lot of time on Job's big finish. So the last section we have here, basically from chapter 26 to chapter 31, is recorded in the Bible as Job's last speech. So 5 chapters worth of a last speech. I guess that would be 6 chapters because we're counting musically here, right? 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. So 6 chapters. Well, let us look at Job's response, shall we? Job answers his friends by saying, "How you have helped one who has no power." Don't tell me there's no sarcasm in the Bible, because this is how you have assisted the arm that has no strength. How you have counseled one who has no wisdom and given much good advice, with whose help you have uttered words and whose spirit has come forth from me. You're getting some help to give me this advice, aren't you? Because this is so good. Yes, unfortunately, the Bible does not record tone of voice, but you have to believe there is some serious sarcasm indication here, as he seems to mean the opposite in every other sentence he has with them. So Job continues. Job again took up his discourse and said, "As God lives, who has taken away my right, and the Almighty, who has made my soul bitter," just so you know who I'm blaming for this, that God and the Almighty is the one I'm talking about.
So there's
No question about who I'm upset with here. "As long as my breath is in me and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils, my lips will not speak falsehood, and my tongue will not utter deceit. Far be it from me to say that you are right. Until I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. I hold fast my righteousness and will not let it go. My heart does not reproach me for any of my days." There's doubling down, and then there's doubling down. I mean, Job basically says, "I would agree with you if you were right, but as you are not, I will not.
Yes.
And until I die." Yes, I realize that you've made it, but as it is a stupid decision, right? He is absolutely not giving up his integrity. This was the same thing his wife, remember, said, "Why do you persist in your integrity? Why do you hold on? Just go ahead, curse God and die, get the suffering over with. You're not going to win a contest with God. Just go ahead and punt." Job says, "No, I'm going down, but I'm going down with my integrity intact." I mean, he's acknowledged he won't win against God, but as God lives, I'm not going to say you're right because you're wrong, and I'm going to hold on to my integrity. So Job is absolutely convinced that he is right. And here's the thing, we know that, right? We read that at the beginning of the book. We know Job is right. It just doesn't make any sense, which is Job's problem. So here's where it gets weird. In chapter 27, starting in verse 7, through the end of that chapter, there are scholars who believe this is part of Zophar's last speech. And they say this because in that section, I said verse 6, I meant 7 to 23. In that section, the wicked are punished. The person speaking says the wicked will be punished, which of course is not in keeping with the rest of Job's speeches. Now, I have to concede that there is no textual evidence for this beyond content. In other words, there aren't manuscripts that insert Zophar's speech. And in the midst of this, scholars will sometimes say, well, verses 11 and 12 sound like Job, but 7 to 10 and 13 to 23 don't sound like Job, so they're probably Zophar. Now, I am willing to concede that they don't sound like Job. I mean, Job has, up to this point, not, I mean, last week alone, when Zophar said, the wicked are always punished, and Job's response was, have you met anyone on the street and ever talked to them, ever? Because no, that is not the way the world works. So he does seem to contend with that argument. The lack of textual support for that, though, is one that gives me a little bit of pause. If we had manuscripts that back that up, I would probably be a little more inclined to that interpretation. Now, don't interpret that position of mine as saying that I believe that this is easy to interpret. Therefore, it is not, because it is an unusual section that I really don't know what to do with. Um, he's been sarcastic before. Maybe this is more sarcasm. And of course, we can't hear tone of voice. I don't know. I really don't know what to do with this, but it's an odd section, and that's all I can offer you on that one. So, but we do get back to Job's speech, and he continues on. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place for gold to be refined. Iron's taken out of the earth, copper smelted from ore. Miners put it into darkness and search out the farthest bound. The ore in gloom and deep darkness. They open shafts, a valley away from human habitations. Forgotten by travelers, they sway suspended, remote from people. And as for the earth, out of it comes bread. But underneath it turned up as by fire. Its stones are the place of sapphires, and dust contains gold. So he's basically saying, look, I know where to find copper. I know how to make, smelt copper. I know where gold is. I know where silver comes from. Bread comes out of the earth, but underneath that you can find gold and silver. I get that. But he says, jump down, but where shall wisdom be found? And I know where to find gold. I know where to find wisdom, precious. Where can wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Mortals don't know the way of it, and it's not found in the land of the living. The deep says it's not in me. The deep is, the Hebrew word is tehom. It is the chaos waters that we've talked about, right? That we talked about Leviathan. So in Job 3, where he wants to wake Leviathan, the incarnation of the chaos waters, apparently he just wants chaos to reign. He's not pretending chaos has any answers at that point. The deep says it's not in me. The sea says it's not with me. It cannot be gotten for gold, and silver cannot be weighted out as its price. So he's just really desperate for an answer on this, right? He wants to know, I know where to find gold, even though it's rare. I know where to find silver, even though it's rare. But even if I had gold and silver, I still don't know where to find understanding. It doesn't make sense. This simply doesn't make sense. My suffering doesn't make sense, which we've said from the beginning. God understands a way to it. He knows its place, for he looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he gave to the wind its weight and he apportioned out the waters by measure, when he made a decree for the rain and a way for the thunderbolt. I wanted to include this in here because I wanted to show you what Job thinks of God. Job does acknowledge that God is being unfair, that God seems to be unjust because he sends this suffering on the righteous and the wicked. But he also acknowledges God can see to the ends of the earth. God sees everything under heaven. God gave the wind its weight, apportioned out the waters, made the decree for the rain. He acknowledges God is the God of all creation. He acknowledges God, as he even uses the word almighty in that last section. But so he's not believing in God. He's not toying with atheism here. He is frustrated with the character that he sees as the character of God that is in question at this point. So I just want to make sure to put that in there. And he said to humankind, truly, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. So again, is this Job's words? It says it is, but verse 29, chapter 29, verse 1. Job again took up his discourse and said, this is all part of that same speech. Oh, that I were though that I were as in the months of old, and in the days when God watched over me. So no longer does he feels God watch over him. When his lamp shone over my head, and by his light I walked through darkness, when I was in my prime, when the friendship of God was upon my tent, when the Almighty was still with me, when my children were around me, when my steps were washed with milk, and the rock poured out for me streams of oil, when I went out to the gate of the city, when I took my seat in the square, and the young men saw me. When I took my seat in the square, the young men saw me and withdrew, and the aged rose and stood. The nobles refrained from talking and laid their hands on their mouths. The voices of princes were hushed, and their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouths. When the ear heard, it commended me, and when the eye saw, it approved. I mean, boy, there were days, I was respected and loved by everyone when God looked out for me. But now they mock me in song. That's rough. I mean, it's bad enough to be mocked, but exactly, to have it, as Thomas just said, to have it pressed into vinyl is a whole nother level. It is. I mean, it is. They've made up Job mocking songs now. I'm a byword to them. They abhor me. They keep aloof from me. They do not hesitate to spit at the sight of me. because God has loosed my bowstring and humbled me. Earlier, he said, I've got a new bow. My bow was always new. But once the bow gets loose, apparently you can't shoot arrows anymore. I don't know. I don't know that we're dealing with euphemism here or not. Maybe. But God has loosed my bowstring and humbled me. They've cast off restraint in my presence. Oh, my right hand that the rabble rise up. They send me sprawling. They build roads for my ruin. They break up my path. They promote my calamity. No one restrains them. As through a wide breach they come. Amid the crash they roll on. Remember, these are the days of siege warfare. And so a breach in the wall would be a common understanding there. Terrors are turned upon me. My honor is pursued as by the wind, and my prosperity has passed away like a cloud. Prosperity gospel. Job immediately realized there's a problem with the prosperity gospel. In all of Job's speeches, and I'm thinking of chapter 3, but chapter 8 in particular, he says that God raises up the wicked and casts down the righteous. And we saw that last week as well in some of Job's speeches, I think 24. So yeah, his problem is he was thinking that's the way it worked. That's certainly the way all of Job's friends were talking. Obedience brings blessing, disobedience brings punishment. But Job is saying, I'm telling you, that's not how it works, because I am innocent and I am suffering. So absolutely, Job is coming to grips with with frustration here. Yeah. And now my soul is poured out within me. Days of affliction have taken hold of me. The night racks my bones. The pain that gnaws me takes no rest. With violence he seizes my garment. This is God. God grasps me by the collar of my tunic. He's cast me into the mire. I've become like dust and ashes. I cry to you, and you do not answer me. I stand, and you merely look at me. You've turned cruel to me. With the might of your hand, you persecute me. You lift me up on the wind. You make me ride on it. You toss me about in the roar of the storm. I know that you will bring me to death and to the house appointed for all living. So everybody's going to die, and I know you're going to kill me. Does not calamity befall the unrighteous? Does disaster the workers of iniquity? Does he not see my ways and number all my steps? So he's saying, look, isn't it the case that bad people are punished? And if that is the case, isn't God watching me? I mean, doesn't God see? He's had it. This is it. This is chapter 31, by the way. And this is Job's big finish right here. He's been building to this the whole time. We now get a recitation of what Job is demanding of God. He starts in verse 5. If I have walked with falsehood and my foot has hurried to deceit, let me be weighed in a just balance and let God know my integrity. If my step, so in other words, right, if I've told a lie, then call me out on it. But I know God will know my integrity. I know I haven't. If my steps have turned aside from the way and my heart has followed my eyes, if any spot has clung to my hands, then let me sow and another eat. In other words, let it happen. And let what grows for me be rooted out. So in other words, if there's sin in there, okay, call it out. But I haven't done that. If my heart has been enticed by a woman and I've lain in wait at my neighbor's door, then let my wife grind for another. Let other men kneel over her. For that would be a heinous crime. That would be a criminal offense. If I've rejected the cause of my male or female slaves when they brought a complaint against me, what then shall I do when God rises up? When he makes inquiry, what shall I answer him? Did not he who made me in the womb make them? And did not one fashion us in the womb? So, in other words, I am treating my slaves better than God is treating me. I hear their complaints and I make restitution and fix it. Where's God on this? If I'm God's servant, why isn't God taking care of me? If I've withheld, well, I missed it. If I've withheld anything that the poor desired, or have caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or eaten my morsel alone, and the orphan has not eaten from it. For from my youth I reared the orphan like a father. From my mother's womb I guided the widow. If I have seen anyone perish for lack of clothing, or a poor person without covering, whose loins have not blessed me, and who was not warned in the fleece of my sheep, if I have raised my hand against the orphan because I saw I had supporters at the gate, then let my shoulder blade fall from my shoulder. That would hurt, I would think. Wouldn't that hurt? That just feels like that would hurt. And let my arm be broken from its socket, for I was in terror of calamity from God, and I could not face his majesty. if I have made gold my trust, or called fine gold my confidence, if I have rejoiced because my wealth was great, or because my hand had gotten much, if I've looked at the sun when it shone, or the moon moving in splendor. I think that's a worship statement. I don't think it's like, don't look at the sun. I don't think this is advice not to gaze at the sun. You shouldn't look at the sun. I'd like to make that absolutely clear, but I don't think that's what Job is referring to here. Shemesh was a god in the ancient Near East, as was Sin, the god of the moon. And so those are pretty popular. Yeah. Job is building his formal legal complaint against God here. So we're going to see at the end that what he is basically doing is subpoenaing God into court to answer these charges. If you can prove I've lied or cheated on my wife, or withheld food from an orphan, or withheld food from a widow, or did what I did for pride, or trusted in my money, or worshiped another god, we're still building here. This is all his case that he is building here. God is absolute. Well, yeah, God is the audience. I mean, to some degree, God is the audience. In another sense, it's like the legal forum is the audience. It's like he's going to court against God. I mean, God is involved here, and he summons God here at the end, but it's not. But he's demanding. So I think, I would say God is the audience. And my heart. This would be an iniquity to be punished by the judges, for I should have been false to God above. If I've rejoiced at the ruin of those who hated me, or exulted when evil overtook them. So he's not even, no Schadenfreude even going on here. I mean, he's not even, if I've ever taken joy at the people I hate suffering, and exalted, if I have not let my mouth sin by asking for their lives with a curse, I have not let my mouth sin by asking for their lives with a curse. So he has not even used an imprecatory prayer against his enemies here. If those of my tent ever said, oh, that we might be sated with his flesh. So, I mean, even if they were members of his own family, he has not taken vengeance against them, or even asked for vengeance against them, he is saying. And here's the big finish. The stranger has not lodged in the street. I have opened my doors to the traveler. If I've concealed my transgressions as others do, by hiding my iniquity in my bosom, because I stood in great fear of the multitude, and the contempt of families terrified me, so that I kept silence and did not go out of doors. Oh, that I had one to hear me. Here is my signature. Let the Almighty answer me. So he's signing this now, right? Let God answer me. Oh, that I had an indictment written by my adversary. Again, Job's name, enemy or adversary, that he is paralleling in Hebrew with Almighty here. He says that I had an indictment written by my adversary. Surely I would carry it on my shoulder. I would bind it on me like a crown. If God would write out why I deserve this, I will tattoo it to my head and show everybody, right? I'll put it on my shoulders. I'll wear it like a crown. I deserve this. I was wrong. God was right. I'll tell everybody. If any of these things was true, I will show the world that, yes, turns out I was a hypocrite. Turns out I was wrong. Turns out God was right, and I denied this. But, he says in the last verse, the last words he gives, I would give him an account of all my steps. Like a prince, I would approach him. But he can't. If I had an indictment to say why this makes sense, I'd wear it. But he can't. I get to walk up to him with a clear conscience and my integrity and say, I don't deserve this. And I know I don't deserve this. That's Job's big finish. He has a few more words, but they're basically the same thing. Now, he's just demanded that God show up in court and give an accounting of the divine. He has just demanded, he's signed out his legal indictment, he's put his name on it. He's had enough, right? He said he wanted to do this early in the book, but he said, of course, the minute I do that, God's going to overwhelm me, because I said you can't sue Walmart. God's too big. God's too powerful. I'm going to get in God's presence, and I'm not going to be able to speak. There's just no way I can do it. But apparently, by chapter 31, we're tired of it. We're just tired of it. I know God's going to kill me, but I'm going to keep my integrity all the way to the end. So now might be a very good time for God to show up, right? I mean, God has just been called out by Job. He's just been summoned to appear, and he doesn't. It's chapter 31. God doesn't show up till chapter 38. So what happens in those intervening chapters? The fourth friend shows up. The fourth friend, who is not named at the beginning of the book, who is not named at the end of the book, who is not named anywhere else in the book except chapters 32 to 37. Those 6 chapters, the only place that we find the fourth friend, Elihu, the son of Barachel the Buzite. So these 3 men ceased to answer Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. Then Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite of the family of Ram, became angry. Nice to know who that is, but we still have no idea who that is. He was angry at Job because he justified himself rather than God. He was angry also at Job's 3 friends because they had found no answer, though they had declared Job to be in the wrong. Now, Elihu had waited to speak to Job because they were older than he. But when Elihu saw that there was no answer in the mouths of these 3 men, he became angry. We don't know anything about Elihu. We've got no indication he's been there this whole time. For that reason, these 6 chapters, Elihu is just hiding in the bushes. For that reason, those 6 chapters generally believed to be added later, very possibly added later. It's possible. They don't seem to have the same level of Hebrew. This is kind of repetitive. You can see this too. Not as much slang, it's just as elegantly written as the rest. He's younger. That's right. All the emojis and he kept throwing these memes up. Nobody knew what was going on. No, but I can summarize the first chapter basically of his speech in this. Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite, answered, I am young in years, and you are aged. Therefore, that's strong opening. That's a strong opening. It is. Therefore, I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. I said, let days speak, many years teach wisdom. But truly, it is the spirit and immortal, the breath of the Almighty that makes for understanding. It's not the old that are wise. Yes. Nor the aged that understand what is right. Therefore, I say, listen to me and let me declare my opinion. I thought y'all were bright because you were old, but you're not. So I've got some things to say. The best part about this, the whole first chapter, this is all he does. There's no content at all in the first chapter of his speech. It's just repeating, and I'm angry, and I've got something to say. Therefore, listen to me, because you are old, but you didn't tell anything. So I have something to declare. It's just like, get to it. It's a college essay. That's all Elihu does in his whole first chapter. Is I shall speak to you. Let me declare. Listen to me, for I have something to say. It's like, well, what does he say? Say it already. Not much. Finally, he gets to his point. Let me summarize. Let me sum up. There's too much. God speaks through dreams and pain. Job should listen. That's one thing he says. God can't do wrong, so Job must be wrong, which sounds a lot like what the friends were saying. God does restore the righteous and judge the wicked, but in God's own time. So you're probably just not being patient. Just got to hang on there, Job. And God is all powerful, so shut up. That's basically where Elihu comes at that. Yeah, it's not. And he doesn't give us much. So we're a little brief tonight, I know, but what's the point of Elihu? Yeah, some scholars would say none. I think it may have been added because, as I have said before, Job makes us uncomfortable. And Job's friends sound like they know what's going on. They sound orthodox. And Job has the last word. And I feel like there were some people who were on the side of Job's friends and didn't like Job having the last word in that. And so they added this text. Because again, there's nothing here, right? There's really nothing new in Elihu's speeches, unless you just want to make fun of old people. Then there's all sorts of great verses for that. But I mean, what are we doing? What's new here?
Okay, boomer.
But it's the okay boomer of the Bible. But I do think that I can tell you what it does in the text. I don't know what it contributes, but what it does is it keeps Job from summoning God. It keeps God from looking like he is on the beck and call of Job. It keeps, Job demands God get down here. If God shows up, then Job has now demonstrated that he can demand God get down here, and God shows up. And so the delay while I think narratively frustrating, is supposed to be. I think it actually is providing some time in the story for some distance for Job to sit and wait for the divine to show up before God actually does show up. Boy, does God show up, man. When God shows up, God really shows up. We're going to see Job is mortal, God is not. God is almighty. And the almighty appearing when the mortal demands that the almighty appear diminishes the almighty a little bit in the story. And as we're going to see, the focus of God's speeches is the reminder of who's almighty and who isn't. I think Job having to wait does make God's speech, it reinforces the transcendence of God. Right. If he immediately appears, I feel like it diminishes transcendence on some level. But since the emphasis, and the spoiler alert for next week, the emphasis on God's speeches is God's transcendence and power, then we're going to see that is now preserved, if not enhanced, by keeping Job from being able to just summon the Almighty to get down here into the court that he's sworn him into.